The most horrifying found footage that will leave you shaking while I take fear factor to a whole new level. First up, we have the infamous dibbuk box. You might have heard of this story before, but for those who haven't, let me fill you in. As the story goes, a dibbuk box appeared in 2003 when antique store owner Kevin Mannis bought a vintage wine box from a 103-year-old Holocaust survivor on eBay. After a strange string of unexplained hauntings, reoccurring nightmares, bruises, and smells of ammonia, the box found its way back onto eBay and landed in the hands of a man named Jason Haxton. Now, he too felt the wrath of the box and ended up burying it somewhere in Missouri, but not before pulling it out of the ground to appear on the television show Ghost Adventures. Haxton had paid $280 for the box, and when opened, contained a goblet, 2 locks of hair tied with string, pennies from the 1920s, a dried rosebud, a cast iron candlestick holder, and a granite statue engraved with Hebrew letters. Haxton said that he didn't believe the stories associated with the box and didn't have any worries when opening it. He heard strange noises though, moving objects, and unexplained events that will send chills down your spine. Well, at least it did mine. The cabinet was described as a wine cabinet to him. Jason reported that he would start hearing these strange noises coming from the cabinet, such as like knocking sounds and whispers. He also claimed to have seen very, shadowy figures lurking around the cabinet, and even reported feeling the presence in the room with him. As the strange occurrences continued, Jason began to research, the history of the cabinet. He discovered that it had once belonged to a Jewish family who had immigrated to the United States from Poland. The family had reportedly used the cabinet to store their belongings, but had also used it as a makeshift altar. Now, Jason became convinced that the cabinet was haunted, and according to the legend, a dibbuk is a spirit that is created when a person passes in a state of great emotional turmoil, such as sadness or anger. The spirit is said to be trapped between the world of the living and the afterlife, and is often drawn to objects or places that hold a lot of sentimental value. As the occurrences continue, Jason decided to seek out the help of a rabbi who specialized in Jewish mysticism. Now, the rabbi performed a ritual to cleanse the cabinet of the dibbuk, but it didn't work apparently. Jason eventually became so convinced that the cabinet was just way too haunted and decided to sell it. It definitely wouldn't have taken me that long. It would have been gone night one, but I guess he really loved the cabinet. However, despite trying to sell it, he soon discovered it wasn't easy to get rid of. Several people who had purchased the cabinet from him reported experiencing the same occurrences, including nightmares, noises, even physical attacks. Once Jason did get rid of it, it was actually purchased by another collector who then chose to remain anonymous. That collector reported experiencing strange things as well. Apparently, the two at one point had actually gotten together to discuss their experiences with the box and shared stories. And, he helped actually Jason track down the family that originally had the box. But what makes this story even more terrifying is that, again, these are real people. Jason wrote a book about it, which, went on to sell a lot of copies, and it is, of course, one of the most haunted books that exists. Today, the dibbuk box is actually said to be in the possession of the anonymous collector, who has reportedly taken whatever steps necessary to just protect himself and his family from the evil spirit. However, the legend of the dibbuk box continues to captivate people around the world. It may remain, convinced that it is indeed haunted, and Jason's story has been the subject of much debate and speculation. Now, there's also footage on YouTube, though, of a man named Joseph Mazzaferro opening a dibbuk box at 3 a.m. It's frightening. I had my eyes half shut the whole time. You can hear something speaking back to him. I won't ruin it for you, but go look for it for yourself and let me know what you think. Next up, we have the No End House story. This one's a bit more recent, and it's based on a very popular internet urban legend. The story goes that a man named Brian Russell explored an abandoned house with a strange layout where, each room seemed to shift and change. It's framed as a lengthy first-person account of, a trip through this really weird, twisted house. It's a haunted attraction that boosts a series of scarier and scarier rooms. But the twist, which isn't really a spoiler given that, the TV show uses it to cap off the first episode, is that the person telling the story might not have ever even left the house. The footage shows Brian navigating the house, but what starts as a curious exploration, quickly turns into a desperate fight for survival. But here's the thing, this footage is allegedly real, and Brian Russell is a real person. He's a filmmaker who actually actually created the footage as part of a project, but the way it's presented makes it seem like it's actual found footage. So there's a lot of speculation over that. And let me tell you, it is seriously unsettling. Now I know some of you might be thinking, but wait, isn't found footage just a bunch of shaky cameras and fake scares? And to that I say, not always. Sometimes found footage can be genuinely terrifying, especially when it's based on real events.
What better place to start today's list than an old abbey? Specifically, Rush Abbey is a now ruined abbey in the civil parish of Maltby, Rotherham, South Yorkshire, England. If I mispronounced any of that, I apologize, I tried. It is in the valley of Maltby Beck and is administered by English Heritage. It's also listed in the National Register of Historic Parks and Gardens. The abbey was founded in 1147 when the stone buildings were raised on the north side of the beck. The co-founders of Rush were Richard de Buzzley, likely the great-nephew of the first Roger de Buzzley, the Norman magnet builder of Tickhill Castle, and Richard Fitzgerald. When the monks first arrived in South Yorkshire from Newminster Abbey in Northumberland, they chose the most suitable site of the stream that runs through the valley to build their new Cistercian monastery. 25 years later, at the end of the century, the Norman Gothic Great Church, dedicated to the Virgin Mary, had been finished, as well as most of the other buildings. The control of the abbeys was vested in the de Vesci family, lords of Rotherham, who in turn subfeuded the land to Richard Fitzgerald, Lord of Wickersley. From the start, the Abbey of Rush, built for the so-called white monks, as the Cistercians were known, had an almost otherworldly air. It was, after all, built at the northern end of an area once owned by Sherwood Forest, and it was said that Robin Hood went to mass here. At its height, it supported a community of around 175 men, of whom around 60 were choir monks, and the remainder being lay brothers. A Cistercian innovation. Eventually, on the death of the co-founder Fitzgerald, control of the abbey passed to his son Roger, now de Wickersley, and then eventually to a granddaughter, Constantia, who married William de Levitt, a family of Norman origin who were the lords of the nearby village of Houghton Levitt. The abbey continued in the Levitt family until 1377, when John Levitt sold his rights in the abbey to the London merchant Richard Barry. By the time of the dissolution, full control of Rush Abbey was held by Henry Clifford, 2nd Earl of Cumberland, who came in for numerous grants at the dissolution, as he was married to the niece of King Henry VIII. Back in 2021, members of the Conisbrough Paranormal Research Association were adamant that they had spotted a spooky monk at the old abbey. Dean, age 38, from Conisbrough, said that they had been up there taking photos, and the most interesting one was near the first gatehouse. They had found that one of the pictures, which had showed a monk from the chest up, with an orb, like a ball of energy, and the photo showed the outline of his head and a hood. Now, they were still going through the photographs at the time of the articles, because they took up to 1,000, but they were pretty sure it was a monk that would have lived there in the 12th century, when it was still an abbey. So the footage we have today was from the Haunted Finders channel here on YouTube, where a group of investigators had their equipment pick up a lot of spirits still kicking around on the grounds. Time to move over to Ness Church for a little change of pace, and maybe I won't bungle up as many words. Eerily surrounded by gigantic fields, this church is so rural that Google Street View didn't even have documentation of it by 2019. Hell, as of the time of my recording of this, they still don't have a Street View option. There are other roads nearby that have been covered, but nowhere near the church. Like we got like here, the church is over here, none of this. If that isn't ominous enough, I don't know what is. Originally organized as the Norwegian Evangelical St. Johan's Congregation of Meeker and surrounding counties in 1861, Ness Church, located in Litchfield, Minnesota, is said to be one of the most haunted locations in the state. This tiny country church is said to be haunted by the spirits of settlers killed during the Sioux uprising of the 1860s. In the nearby town of Acton, a handful of young locals shot and killed 5 settlers, including a woman and her daughter, and all 5 are buried there. The incident sparked a violent conflict that ended with a mass execution of 38 Dakota residents in Mankato, a dark chapter in Minnesota's history. Some folks have reported the lights of the church come on by themselves and apparitions spotted on the premises. Avid ghost hunters frequent the grounds, and back in 2015, there was actually an instance of 4 people breaking into the church and being charged with felony burglary and criminal damage to property. Church officials tried to curb the trespassing and unwanted break-ins by offering guided tours. The video in question today seems to show an apparition caught on camera. You let me know what you think in the comments. Back to abbeys we go, with Kirkstall Abbey next up on the docket. The picturesque ruins have been drawn and painted by artists such as J.M.W. Turner, Thomas Girton, and John Sell Cotman. Kirkstall Abbey was acquired by the Leeds Corporation as a gift from Colonel North and opened to the public in the late 19th century. The gatehouse became a museum, which is now part of the Leeds Museums and Galleries group. The English houses, of which there are remains at Fountains, Rievaulx, Kirkstall, Tintern, and Netley, were mainly arranged after the same plan, with slight local variations. Situated just outside of Leeds, Kirkstall Abbey still stands to its full height and for centuries offered a peaceful existence for the monks who lived and worked there. However, daily life could be harsh, and like any community, it was not immune to intrigue and mystery as religion developed. With over 800 years of history, this abbey attracts many visitors and is considered one of the oldest attractions in the region. During the dissolution of the monasteries under King Henry VIII, this abbey was emptied and its remains were left behind. Now, after that dissolution, sightings of ghosts have become common, and by the 19th century there were reports of ghostly apparitions in the nave of the church. One witness claimed to have seen a funeral procession of somber men, clad in white, proceeding slowly. Now, the abbey is also famous for its repeated haunting manifestation of a former abbot that walks around the building that has now been converted to the Abbey House Museum, although you're more likely to hear him moving around than you are to see him. Some also believe that there is a mad monk who haunts the abbey after his brother was killed by highwaymen on his way back from the Fountains Abbey, which is another abbey in Yorkshire. Mad with guilt and despair, he began carving his brother's initials into the abbey grounds that can apparently still be seen in small bench nooks around the ruins even now, and he continues to walk around the abbey to this day. The grounds are also home to a young female entity called Mary, who witnessed her lover ending the life of another and then turned him in. She has often been seen with the ghost of a dog, but we're not sure if they're connected or not. The footage we have today, by the way, is another stellar example of spirit communication tech at work. I've used some of those things before myself. They are quite reliable and pretty freaky. Okie dokie, internet sleuths, I need your help with this next video. In my opinion, it's an internet legend that's been kicking around since 2007. Heck, I remember the first time I watched it on my little iPod under my High School Musical comforter, terrified. I was up too late, and when my brain saw something like this, well, I was already in the dark. Well, let's just say it sent my mind racing. I'm the kind of gal who needs to have all the doors closed in a room or I cannot sleep. It is not happening. Heck, I was recently in an area that was affected by a weird power outage, and I think I lasted like an hour in the darkness with my 20 candles before I went to a home with power because I couldn't stand being alone with my thoughts, and yeah, nope. Not it. Sorry, back to the video I go. This one depicts David Hole and Jake Garrison, who allege that they stumbled upon an abandoned chapel in the woods and decided to do some sleuthing. As one does. How very Scooby-Doo of you. And the duo encountered a spirit playing the piano while they did. And very well, if I say so myself. Fun fact about me, folks, I took Royal Conservatory piano testing when I was younger, so I have an idea of what I'm talking about. I used to have to sight read. Other than that, I have no idea where the funeral channel guys are located, so let me know in the comments what you know. Okie dokie, everybody. We're gonna end today with an exorcism filmed through a peephole. So it's no secret that exorcisms are still a practice done today, but the Catholic Church really likes pretending that they don't because of the negativity and stigma around it. Technically speaking, the Catholic Church authorizes the use of exorcism for those who are believed to be the victims of demonic possession. Specifically, in Roman Catholicism, exorcism is a sacramental but not a sacrament, unlike baptism, confirmation, or confession. So unlike a sacrament, exorcism's efficiency depends on two elements: authorization from valid and legitimate church authorities and the faith of the exorcist. The church will ask publicly, and in a position of authority, in the name of Jesus Christ, that a person or object be protected against the power of the evil one and withdrawn from his dominion. Now, the rite of exorcism was revised in January of 1999 and assumes that possessed persons retain their free will, though the demon may hold control over their physical body and involves prayers, blessings, and invocations with the use of the document of exorcisms and certain supplications. Typically, the individual will be restrained and the priest will perform a ritual of prayers to remove the evil spirits. Solemn exorcisms, according to the canon law of the church, can be exercised only by an ordained priest or higher, with the express permission of the local bishop, and only after a careful medical examination to exclude the possibility of mental illness. The Catholic Church has between 500 to 600 official exorcists, by the way, with the vast majority operating in Latin America and Eastern Europe. Now that we're all clear on the formal definition of exorcisms, let's dive into this lovely video from 2014. The ritual was captured on camera by a man who heard the shrieks of a woman inside the sanctuary and filmed it through a peephole. The incident occurred at the Assumption of the Virgin Mary Church in Franov nad Digi in February of 2014, and the church priest, Marek Dunda, confirmed the video is real, but mentioned that if something's filmed through a keyhole, he's not going to say anything about it. Dear Zachary is a good one to start out with, since it's a doozy and a half. The full title is Dear Zachary, a letter to a son about his father, and it's a 2008 American film written, produced, directed, edited, filmed, and scored by Kurt Quinn. Yep, he did everything. It's about Kurt's close friend, Andrew Bagby, who was killed after ending a relationship with a woman named Shirley Jean Turner. Now, she was arrested as a suspect, and shortly thereafter announced she was pregnant with Andrew's offspring, a boy she named Zachary. So Kurt was like, okay, I want to make a video for Zachary about how his dad, because he wants Zachary to know just how great of a man his dad was. And the drama that unfolds while he's making this movie is insane. Like, it's real. It isn't really like true crime, like it's just visceral. Yes, there's parts that are heartwarming, but a lot of it is heartbreaking. And the filmmaker had no idea most of the content of this movie was going to happen. Like, this is only something you can really watch if you're in like an okay emotional state. Because the worst part about it, spoiler alert, the son ends up being killed by the mother right before she takes her own life. Look, I did mention this was dark and awful, right? Ergo why I wanted to get it out of the way first. So in 2009, after watching the film, Canadian MP Scott Andrews introduced Bill C-464, also known as Zachary's Bill, to the Parliament of Canada, and it helps protect young descendants in relation to bail hearings, custody disputes, and it was signed into the law the following year. So yes, while some good came out of this mess, it's still just so awful. House LLC takes place in the aftermath of a haunted house attraction going badly wrong, leaving over a dozen people dead and the police and press with a lot of questions. Years later, the makers of a documentary about the tragedy meet with Sarah, the only known survivor of the team behind Hell House, and she gives them never-before-seen footage detailing to the build-up that fateful night and what really happened. Look, I'm a scare actor myself, so I loved every minute of watching this film. It hits all the right notes. It's incredibly creepy, it has a consistent feel and pace throughout, and it has good actors in all the main roles. The documentary format lends an air of realism to the story, and it is very well done. Like, it does such an effective job of blurring the lines that a lot of viewers wondered, was there a real Abaddon Hotel tragedy true story? And while it does a great job seeding in the lore of the tragedy, Hell House is not based on a real story. The filmmakers filmed this movie on location at the Waldorf estate of Fear House. It's a haunted attraction in Layton, Pennsylvania. For a decade, the Poughkeepsie Tapes was stuff of legend. It was a type of movie that's only found in like a creepypasta. So if you believe the rumors, this documentary about a serial killer terrorizing Poughkeepsie, New York, used real footage of that man attacking, harming, and killing his victims. Obviously, it isn't the case since it's a completely fictional film about a made-up serial killer, but that hasn't kept the film from holding on to its true story legacy. So the movie opens with the discovery of the tapes themselves. After uncovering 10 bodies in a residential backyard, the police unearthed something far more menacing. Over 800 tapes from the killer, each detailing his heinous exploits. Composed of this found footage, interviews with experts, and one victim's testimony, the movie pieces together the story of the Water Street Butcher. Now, it's kind of a hard flick to watch, and it's best accompanied by a couple of trigger warnings. The eerie mimicry of early 2000s true crime shows like Forensic Files and Unsolved Mysteries is very convincing, making it difficult not to get sucked into the reality of it all. Like, even today, people are tricked into believing that the footage from the tapes is real, despite, the obvious pointing to the contrary. The claim to reality is a constant source of controversy for the film, as is its deeply unsettling content. But the thing that stands out most in complaints is that it wasn't the movie that people preemptively decided it should be. So it premiered in 2007 at the Tribeca Film Festival, where it was quickly snatched up by MGM for distribution. They marketed the movie heavily, but it would all prove a huge waste of money when the film mysteriously vanished from the studio's 2008 release schedule. Though you could find the movie at the time through less than legal means, it didn't get a wide release until it hit video on demand in 2014. Apparently, MGM thought they should be making more money off this venture, and then they pulled it for a never-to-be-seen theatrical release. Okay, finally, 2017, Shout Factory released the movie on DVD and Blu-ray. Just more proof of the value of physical media. So for many of those early viewers, the fun of the mystery was the mystery. Is the footage real? Why did MGM pull it? Was it banned for being too extreme? This and a plethora, if you will, of other questions swirled around online forums in the time from those early trailers to the movie's eventual home release. Yes, the killer's tapes in the movie are graphic, but not in the way people expect. A lot of the violence is off-screen, it's implied or described, but never shown outright, and it forces the audience to imagine the most disturbing moment. Spoiler alert, in what's called the scariest scene in the movie, the killer, posing as a police officer, picks up a hitchhiking woman looking for a ride to the nearest gas station. And when he drives past the station, the woman's face falls into an expression of absolute dread, because she realizes it's no police officer. And over the next 6 minutes, the audience is forced to watch as she hopelessly pleads for her life. If that doesn't terrify you, damn, I wish. Alrighty, next up we have a movie that's so heinous, I'm not even supposed to be talking about it. Actually, I can't even say its title, but let's call it the people-eating mass extinction event of the 1930s. And it's been highly regarded as the first real big found footage movie of all time. Ergo, I wasn't gonna leave it off today's list. This flick from director Ruggero Deodato wasn't his first movie about people eating, but it was definitely the one that got the most flack from the media. He'd been making films since the 1960s, and he had this trademark style. Flashy, grimy pictures with a hardened edge and plenty of coitus and violence. He was one of many Italian directors who facilitated the people eating boom of the late 70s, and he'd already made one such film, The Last C-Word World, before he got around to this one. So, despite his sensationalist style, he'd already proven himself not only a very competent director, but one with depth and ideas worthy of cinematic examination. So this is the story of a professor journeying to the Amazon to discover what happens to a film crew of missing brave young Americans, only to realize that this characterization couldn't have been further from the truth. From the offset, this movie looks at how the mass media portrays its fellow Americans, the marginalization of those outside the land of the free, and what it means to be civilized. The young filmmakers are immediately positioned by the media as victims of local savagery, and when anthropologist Dr. Monroe is set to find them, it is only through his embracing of the local people that he comes across the lost film reels that's gonna piece this whole puzzle together. Broadcasting executives back in New York are foaming at the mouth at the prospect of a new documentary, even more sensational than the crew's previous works, and they're so focused on sensation and viewing figures that the sizzle reel they show includes, the gang forcibly amputating the leg of their guide literal seconds after he suffers a snake bite. And that's about all I can talk about in detail because, I don't want to get in trouble. As is the case with a lot of old school exploitation flicks, the reels were seized. Why? They were, obscene. But then something crazy happened. Those same reels became evidence in criminal proceedings. This wasn't just a plain old, too devious for public consumption theatrical release. People thought this was a snuff film. And apparently the weirdos who made it were so brazen in their criminality that they were going to throw this big premiere. So the director was brought up on killing charges and was actually forced to bring his actors in for interviews to prove they were still alive, and then demonstrated how they performed some of the special effects. Thankfully, eventually those charges were dismissed. And perhaps slightly more in keeping with Italy's progressive artistic reputation, the courts eventually overturned the movie's ban several years later. But by this point, the director and several of his associates had suffered considerable legal troubles, and countries around the world were banning it, or at the very least censoring it heavily. Now, this film isn't entirely innocent. Although 6 animal deaths appeared on screen, 7 animals were killed for the production, since the scene depicting the monkey's death was done twice, resulting in the death of 2 monkeys. So, I'm not saying I condone this film, but you've got to give it its point in history. And finally, how could I end today without the Blair Witch Project, the pioneer of the found footage genre of horror that we know today? It's a movie with a handheld camera and a dream. When this film came out in 1999, so many folks thought it was real, and it set the tone for what we know as found footage today. Co-written and co-directed by Eduardo Sanchez and Daniel Myrick, the film is about college students investigating the legend of a witch in the woods of Maryland, the shaky camera work, the creepy nature of the forest, and the fact that the movie features characters who feel like regular people all contribute to the film's terrifying tone and legacy. While many horror movies have famous imagery, including iconic villains from slasher movies like Michael Myers from Halloween, Ghostface from Scream, the black and white images of the Blair Witch Project are just as memorable. Personally for me, one of the most unforgettable images? The stick figures that are present in the woods. One co-director, Daniel, he told The Guardian in an interview in 2018 that originally, way back when, he began thinking about a stick figure, and it snowballed, and that's how the movie began. Apparently, he grew up in the woods and swamps of Florida, and for a long time, he had this idea of seeing a stick figure hanging from a tree, and it creeped the hell out of him. That's how you have it, folks. According to astonishing legends, the Blair Witch is actually thought to be based on the story of Moll Dyer, who happens to be one of my favorite witches throughout history to talk about. She is thought to have lived in the 17th century, and she lived alone near Leonardtown. Now, a lot of folks didn't know much about her. She was very mysterious. She was a healer, and people think that a rock in the area has a mark that looks like her handprint. Well, her handprint when she passed. How did that happen? Well, a group of men attacked her, and they were cursed with terrible luck because, she cursed them for doing bad things, which suggested that she was maybe a witch, involved in something dark. Because back then, if you were convicted of being a witch, that was pretty much a death sentence.
Number 5, The Ghost. Coming up first today in our list of real, scary, demonic footage from the beautiful country of India is this particularly threatening video that's been making the rounds online, which, if you believe some commenters, may have proof of ghostly life on it. Or unlife? Is that more correct? Anyway, let's roll the clip and let's take ourselves a look. This white-clad ghost was caught walking on the rooftops of Varanasi in the VDA colony located in the Badi Gabi area. Now in this video you can see a shadow walking on the rooftop of a house and that pale, ethereal, ghostly figure seemingly blowing in the breeze. Now, when the video was shared, it went viral quickly on Twitter, causing a small panic amongst local residents who demanded that there was a formal investigation made by police. Do you guys not know? Have you guys not heard? Has this not reached you? That is not the team you're supposed to call when there's something strange in the neighborhood. You call the Ghostbusters. They have a whole song about it. Now, of course, not everyone bought immediately that this mysterious figure was a ghost. More than a few commenters on the original video suggested that it was just someone hanging their laundry out to dry, and the video was little more than all of us letting our imaginations run wild. I gotta be honest though, if it was late at night and I was on the rooftops of India, I think I would definitely be freaked out seeing this, because it does look like a ghost, even if it does look an awful lot like a bedsheet or someone in a Charlie Brown ghost costume. Sure, it could be a human tendency to form anthropomorphic patterns in objects we don't quite recognize, but it's also entirely possible that it is a ghost. I tried to do some follow-up on this. I was trying to figure out if the local police ever did end up investigating this, but I really don't think they would have been much help. You can't really arrest a ghost. Their hands would slip right on through the handcuffs and you would look just ridiculous. How are you gonna keep a ghost in jail? It's gonna walk right through a wall. You can't arrest a ghost, is what I'm trying to get across. And if you're looking for more footage of ghosts that cannot be arrested, Top 5 Scary has all of that and then some. Oh, you better believe. If you can think it up, there's a good chance we've done 2 or 3 videos on it. Ghouls, goblins, aliens, conspiracies, megalodons, everything and more. So hit subscribe. Please make sure you ring that little bell as well so you don't miss a single one of our videos, but do that at the end of this video, okay? Because I got 4 more freaky things coming out of India to show you right about now. Number 4, the pale figure. Now coming up next is a clip, also out of India, believe it or not. You know they're all gonna be out of India. That went viral last year and captured the attention of paranormal enthusiasts, alien hunters, and skeptics alike. It's nice when you get everyone together like that. We all get equally confused by what we're watching. A strange humanoid-like figure was spotted walking across the road in India, confusing just about everybody. Whatever it was filmed walking alone steadily on a bridge at night in Jharkhand in eastern India, staggering through the night. Now the thing resembles a human, that much is sure, and that's what my brain tells me it should be, but the more you look at it, the more you start to wonder if maybe, just maybe, it might be something else. The creature is real gangly and has these long arms and pale white skin and a very skinny torso, and sounds a bit like your host actually, if I'm being honest. It looks a great deal more like a Silent Hill monster than it does a person. Motorcyclists were swerving out of the way of the figure, which stops and stares at them a bit before continuing to stroll onwards. Now naturally, footage this weird has people talking and wondering as to just what the heck this thing could possibly be. More than a few people suggested it could be an alien walking around the streets at night, explaining why it seems so confused about where it is. Others suggested a ghost, which would definitely be pretty spooky. It seems like it's in the physical plane though, so I don't know if it's a ghost. Finally, there's the realists, who have suggested that this could just be someone who had a long night and is lost, trying to find their way home, possibly on 1, 2, all of the substances, trying to get a good night's sleep. Now, I did some digging. As far as I know, nobody cracked this case, so we may never have a satisfying answer. So that is your cue to speculate and sound off in my little comment box. Number 3, a UFO over India. Coming up next is this clip shared online with the caption, "A weird set of lights above New Delhi." Let's take a little look-see. So in this clip, pretty clearly we can see some strange happenings going on in the night sky. There's a scattering of lights above the city's horizon. Now immediately your first thought is probably to suggest that it might be drones, which is very reasonable. I feel like drones turn out to be a lot of UFO sightings. But the original poster states that drones really are not common for civilians in India at all and are even outright illegal in some parts of the country. And on top of that, the area that he's filming is said to be in the slums, where it is extra less likely that anybody's got any drones to spare. The video, when it was originally posted to Reddit, the poster added this for context. He said, "I saw this today around 8 p.m. in New Delhi with a friend. It was massive. This cannot be a building, as there is no tall building in that direction, only slums with a maximum height of 4 to 5 floors, but these lights looked as tall as the Burj Khalifa. There was a moderate wind going on, and I thought, if it's drones, why aren't they swaying? Not to forget, drones are illegal in India and especially in New Delhi. It looked massive in the sky. I wish the camera saw what my eyes could see because it absolutely blew me away. I've been to drone shows, but this looked nothing like it. Any idea what this could be? Now, some people in the comment section on the clip originally posted suggested that maybe this was a laser light show, but that was just speculation and nothing concrete. A particularly good selection that I enjoyed was that the original poster should have ran towards the lights to see what happens, you know, live a little. Worst case, yeah, you get abducted, but you would get the ride of a lifetime and an amazing story to tell people. Just live a little, you know? And if a UFO is not quite demonic enough for you, terribly sorry about that. Hopefully this next one will change your mind though. Number 2, the mutant goat. Coming in at the next spot, something a teeny tiny little bit different from others. I figured we'd take a small break from pale figures on CCTV and strange lights in the sky, and we'd show something we can all enjoy, you know, something that's fun for the whole family, really bringing everybody together. Mutant goats. On August 16th, a Facebook user named Samira Isa posted these footage of a strange goat that she had discovered. Now, I don't know about you, I already find a goat kind of strange. I think they're definitely one of the most demonic animals by nature. If you've ever heard a goat scream, you definitely know they've got some evil inside them, but this one is on another level. As you can see right away, this goat came out with a face looking a lot more like a human's than a goat. The creature's got a long jawline, a huge nose, and almost like elf ears. It is not hard at all to see why this thing was freaking people out. I think if I saw this writhing and moving in person, I would be running out of the room, grab myself a Bible, a rosary, and some holy water, see about exorcising this demon mutant ghost. Goat. Mutant ghost goat. As soon as the mutant goat was born, it started capturing people's attention, unsurprisingly. Some were afraid the creature was demonic in some way. Others worried the creature was a byproduct of some twisted scientific experimentation. Not 100% sure what the purpose of making a goat with a human face would be. I don't know the practical application of that, but I don't question the facts, I just blindly repeat them. Now, others wondered if this creature hybrid came about naturally, if this was a merging of a deer and a zebra, or a cow and a goat, or a dog and a goat. I don't really know about all that. I'm not a science man, I'm not a scholar, but I don't know if that works the way it does. It might just be a horrific birth mutation that caused this goat to come out serving evil, or could it be something significantly more sinister? Something supernatural we couldn't hope to explain hiding away in those hooves? I'm gonna be honest, I don't want to know. I'm fine with the human face goat and me living on different continents. And number 1, the mountain lion ghost. And in our final spot for today is going to be this ghost footage coming out of Dehradun, India, that's got the internet on fire and paranormal investigators gluing their eyes to the screen to try and figure out just what was caught on camera. This clip was originally posted to Reddit on the ghost subreddit, not to spoil too much which allegedly is in this video, but allegedly it's a ghost. The original uploader claims that people often hear these spine-chilling cries and screams coming from the railway tracks at night when there's no one around, with locals claiming that the screams come from the restless spirit of the woman who died in a train accident in that place, crying out in agony for those doomed to hear. Let's roll that clip so we can put you on edge tonight. I want you sweating. You hear that? Hard not to. Sounds like a screech that goes right through your ears and sticks into your heart, causing your hairs to stand up so straight you could use them as a level. Now, not everyone is as convinced as your easily convinced host that this is proof of a ghost. There were more than a few commenters who suggested that this screech wasn't from a ghost, but rather from a mountain lion, which is kind of like a ghost if a ghost was an alive, really big cat. Now, I'm a young Canadian man, I've got lots of experience with cougars and mountain lions too, and it definitely does sound like a big cat's growl into the night. They definitely sound terrifying. I think this is a rare case in which the sound that's making the creepy noises that isn't a ghost is worse than if it was a ghost. I would rather be haunted than go toe to toe with a mountain lion personally. I know there's at least a chance I could survive fighting a ghost, like a little bit.
In 5th place, we have an exorcism filmed through a peephole. So it's no secret that exorcisms are still a practice done today, but the Catholic Church really likes pretending that they don't because of the negativity around it. Technically speaking, the Catholic Church authorizes the use of exorcism for those who are believed to be the victims of demonic possession. Specifically, in Roman Catholicism, which is what I grew up with, exorcism is a sacramental but not a sacrament, so unlike baptism, confirmation, first communion, or confession. Unlike a sacrament, exorcisms depend on 2 elements: authorization from valid and legitimate church authorities and the faith of the exorcist. The church will ask publicly and authoritatively in the name of Jesus Christ that a person or object be protected against the power of the evil one and withdrawn from his dominion. Now, the rite of exorcism was revised in January of 1999, making it a lot less Latin, and assumes that, possessed persons retain their free will, although the demon may hold control over their physical body. It involves prayers, blessings, and invocations with the use of the document of exorcisms and certain supplications. Typically, the individual will be restrained and the priest will perform a ritual of prayers to remove the evil spirits. Solemn exorcisms, according to the canon law of the church, can be exercised only by an ordained priest or higher, with the express permission of the local bishop, and only after a careful medical examination to exclude the possibility of mental illness. The Catholic Church has between 500 to 600 official exorcists, with the vast majority operating in Latin America and Eastern Europe. Now that we're all clear on the formal definition of exorcisms, time to dive into this lovely 2014 video. The ritual was captured on camera by a man who heard the shrieks of the woman inside the sanctuary and filmed it through the peephole of a door. The incident occurred at the Assumption of the Virgin Mary Church in Vranov, Nadjai, in February of 2014. The church's priest, Marek Dunda, confirmed the video is real, but only said that if something is filmed through a keyhole, there's nothing more to say about it. Which is a dodging the question kind of answer if I've ever heard one. He told the newspaper he was talking to that he carries a mandate from his bishop to perform exorcisms, and also said that the group were asking God to protect and to liberate the person, including using a Latin prayer asking for help, and of course it helps. Pardon me. I'm no expert on exorcism rituals yet, but if you have to state that something of course helps, in my personal experience, it's a smidge sketchy. It's very hard to tell what is happening in the video, but it appears that at least 2 people surround the woman, who can be heard screaming in agony with momentary pauses in between for the duration of the, just under 2-minute long video. Daniel Trokta, who, shot the video after hearing the screams, warns people in the description to watch the chilling footage while wearing headphones, which is what I did. When asked about the condition of the woman in the video, the priest said any details about her or her state were private, and while I'm glad the church is respecting her privacy, I hope that the poor woman has been cured and healed. As much as I joke about it, demonic possession is no pleasant or laughing matter. In 4th place, we have footage from 2020. Okay, before anyone out there panics, I'm talking about the American news magazine that's been, broadcasted on TV since June of 1978. Not the awful year in recent history that we're not going to talk about, because that was awful. On April 5th of 1991, the show featured a segment that showed an actual Roman Catholic ritual of casting out demons, videotaped at a nun's home in suburban Palm Beach County. The segment shows the affected girl, referred to only as Gina, as she thrashes under the effect of ancient prayers, is sprinkled with holy water, and, has a cross being pressed to her head. Common stuff. The girl retches, writhes, yowls, and bares her teeth. She says, "Get out of here! Me not wanna leave!" shrieking all this at the priest, as one hand snaps the gauze bonds tying her to the chair. By the way, apparently if the exorcism team hadn't tied her down, she might have levitated to the ceiling. How very Willy Wonka. At the time, the March 25th issue of US News and World Report carried no fewer than 5 articles on hell and the devil, citing a poll that 6 out of 10 Americans believed in the netherworld, which is 2% more than in the church heyday of the 1950s. Another poll, released in August of the same year, said 55% of Americans believe in the devil and 49% in demonic possession. I'd love to see those results today, but I couldn't find them sadly. Most Catholic leaders say possession is rare, with Reverend Kenneth Doyle, Communications Director for the National Conference of Catholic Bishops, stating he's only heard of about a handful of exorcisms in the last 40 years, but I feel like that's just a PR statement. Here's the thing. When churchmen do perform an exorcism, they almost never talk about it. The main exorcist in this entire report is known only as Father A, and his face is kind of obscure. Sister Lois Schaefer and the Reverend Walton Dockerell of St. Rita Parish near West Palm Beach, who took part in the exorcism, said through a secretary that, no comment. Palm Beach Bishop J. Keith Simons, who permitted the taping, issued only a 4-paragraph statement, saying that the devil really exists, he is powerful and actively at work in the world today, as through the centuries, which echoes what Cardinal John O'Connor of New York said. Now, it was O'Connor's remark that there can be no question about the reality of the devil that initially drew the interest of 2020, especially after the church got about 75 requests from around the country to investigate possible cases of possession. That job fell to the Reverend James LaBarre, a specialist in the occult, who looked into some of the initial initial claims and decided that Gina in South Florida was genuinely being tormented by demons. According to the report, she experienced psychotic episodes, plus visions of demons and dead persons. Oh, I don't wish that on anybody. Her mother says she tried visits to a spiritist and to various hospitals, and in the footage, the priests say the girl is controlled by 10 evil spirits. They meet her violent reactions by following the prayers and the gestures of the rite. The ordeal took about 6 hours, and this isn't really uncommon for exorcism lengths. Before the procedure even took place, Father A mentioned how it's a terrifying experience at times, and that he, could die tomorrow, or be attacked and taken over. Evil spirits like to take their time leaving a body, and not without a fight, and that leaves all of the parties involved extremely drained and exhausted, and vulnerable. Also quoted is Dr. Warren Schlanger of Miami Children's Hospital, where Gina was treated before and after the exorcism, and he did note that her condition improved afterwards. Father Ray, though, is still troubled. He believes the devil is disturbing his sleep, attempting to weaken and destroy him. He counts that as the price he must pay as a church point man against demons. Now, I know, someone's about to ask, but Alexa, didn't you say you'd be talking about hidden footage? The church tried taking this footage down from the internet because they didn't want it to be public anymore, but thankfully they haven't succeeded. In third place, we have the director of The Exorcist. Now, unlike the last two mentions, this footage is missing and locked up, never to be seen. The director of The Exorcist has mentioned in interviews that he was allowed to film a real exorcism at the Vatican, of all places. William Friedkin said he was taken aback at how close the ceremony was to the exorcism depicted in his 1973 film. He said that he doesn't think he will ever be the same after seeing this astonishing thing. Now, he says he intended to shoot The Exorcist as a horror film, but the more he learned it, the more it became a supernatural tale instead. So while the book this was all based on a 1949 case of an American teenager called Roland, Friedkin said the Catholic Archdiocese of Washington, D.C. asked him to change the gender so as to, not draw attention to the young man. But in reality, the director said that it was a young man of 14 and not a gal who was allegedly possessed. Now, the Vatican did not immediately respond to a request for comment, and still has not as of this day. The church asking someone to hide something and then not commenting on it. I'd say I'm shocked, but I made a promise to myself to never lie on here, and I'm not about to start doing that today. Friedkin said he believed the boy was genuinely possessed, convinced that there was no other explanation. He read the diaries of not only the priest involved in the exorcism, but the doctors, the nurses, and the patients at Alexian Brothers Hospital in St. Louis, where this original case was carried out. He's also stated that he's not Catholic, doesn't go to church, or belong to a church or a synagogue. Make of that what you will. In second place, we have the exorcism of a satanic queen. This tale in particular comes from Dr. Richard Gallagher, who is an Ivy League educated, board-certified psychiatrist, and who performed a mental health evaluation on our sad woman to make sure it wasn't, an instance of something that could be helped with modern medicine first and foremost. He described her as a middle-aged woman who wore flowing dark clothes and black eyeshadow, and while she was charming and engaging, she was also part of a satanic cult. This is where I swear I'm not part of a satanic cult, even though that visually fits my aesthetic. She called herself the queen of the cult, but Gallagher would refer to her as Julia, the pseudonym he gave her. The woman had approached her local priest and was convinced she was being attacked by a demon. The priest referred her to an exorcist who reached out to Gallagher for, a mental health evaluation. It was one of the first cases he took, and apparently it changed him. So he helped assemble an exorcism team that met Julia in the chapel of a house. He was adamant that objects would fly off shelves around her, and she somehow knew personal details about him, such as how his mother had died of ovarian cancer, and that the two cats in his house went berserk fighting each other the night before one of her sessions. She even found a way to reach him even when she wasn't with him. One night he was talking on the phone with Julia's priest when he says both men heard one of the demonic voices that came from Julia during her trances, even though she was nowhere near a phone and thousands of miles away. He and a team of exorcists paid her many visits, but eventually she called a halt to the sessions. She was too ambivalent and relished some of the abilities she displayed during her trances. About a year after she dropped out, Gallagher says that he heard Julia's voice on the phone again. This time though, she had called to tell him that she was passing of cancer, and he offered to try and help her with, a team of priests while she was still physically able, but her response was vague, and sadly she passed before he was able to help further. Now, while Gallagher has taped all footage of his work, he's been forbidden by the church to release any of it. Ergo, sorry folks, I got nothing. In first place, we have Ed and Lorraine Warren exorcism footage. Me talking about Ed and Lorraine Warren? I know, a shocker. While the video is blurred on YouTube to protect the identity of the poor girl, I personally think it's up there as one of the most frightening things I've ever seen. At an hour and 20 minutes long, it depicts a Catholic bishop in Connecticut attempting to converse with a demonic entity that has possessed the body of an innocent young woman while her family restrains her. Ed and Lorraine were the ones to alert the church to the possession after meeting her during an audience chat session that was held at the conclusion of one of their public presentations. During portions of the Exorcism when prayer is done, you can hear the demon acting wildly, and it originally refuses to give its name, both of which are quite common in cases of demonic possession. Eventually we learn that there are 4 demons possessing our victim, with one of them identifying themselves as Robert, a name associated with the son of Satan. I'll let a snippet roll now, allowing you to hear the woman for yourself. This footage was unreleased until after the passing of Ed and Lorraine, and it's believed that they were told by the Catholic Church to specifically keep it under wraps, but their son-in-law doesn't have the same fear or respect for the church, depending on one's opinion. How about we kick off today with a flick that technically already has a couple of bands on its record, the Poughkeepsie Tapes. For about a decade, this movie was the stuff of legend, the type of thing that's only found in a creepypasta. If you believed the rumors, this documentary about a serial killer terrorizing Poughkeepsie, New York, used real footage of that man attacking, harming, and killing his victims. Obviously that isn't the case since it's a completely fictional film about a made-up serial killer and not a snuff flick, but that hasn't kept the film from holding on to its true story legacy. So the movie opens with the discovery of the tapes themselves. After uncovering 10 bodies in a residential backyard, the police unearthed something far more menacing: over 800 tapes from a killer, each detailing his heinous exploits. So composed of this found footage, combined with interviews with experts and one victim's testimony, the movie pieces together the story of the Water Street Butcher. Now this flick is difficult to stomach and is best accompanied by a lot of trigger warnings. The film's eerie mimicry of early 2000s true crime shows like Forensic Files and Unsolved Mysteries is quite convincing, making it difficult not to get sucked into the reality of it all. Even today, people are tricked into believing that the footage from the tapes is, well, real, despite the red flags pointing to the contrary. This claim to reality is a constant source of controversy for the film, as is its deeply upsetting content. But the thing that stands out most in complaints is that it wasn't the movie people preemptively decided it should be. So back in the day, it premiered at the 2007 Tribeca Film Festival, where it was quickly snatched up by MGM for distribution. Now they marketed the movie heavily, but it would all prove a huge waste of money when the film mysteriously vanished from the studio's 2008 release schedule. Though the movie could be found through less than legal means, it didn't get a wide release until it hit video on demand in 2014. But then MGM was like, we want to make more money. So then they pulled it again for a never-to-be-seen theatrical release. Finally, in 2017, Shout Factory released the movie on DVD and Blu-ray, which is more proof of the value of physical media. So for many of those early viewers, the fun of the mystery was, well, is the footage real? Why did MGM pull it? Was it banned for being too extreme? This and a plethora of other questions swirled around online forums in the time from those early trailers to the movie's eventual home release. What can I say? The killer's tapes are graphic, just not in the way that you would expect. Most of the violence is off-screen, implied, or described but not shown outright, forcing the audience to imagine the most disturbing moments. Spoiler alert, in what's been called the scariest scene in the movie, the killer, posing as a police officer, picks up a hitchhiking woman looking for a ride to the nearest gas station. And when he drives past the station, the woman's face falls into an expression of absolute dread as she realizes this isn't a police officer. And over the next 6 minutes, the audience is forced to watch as she hopelessly pleads for her life. If that doesn't terrify you, damn. I wish. Next up, we've got Capture, Kill, Release. Honestly, the title reminds me of playing Love, Marry, Kill when I was younger, but this isn't as silly. So Jen and Farhang are a seemingly happy married couple living in a suburban area in a nice-sized home. They appear to love each other, they love their lives together, but then Jen begins to talk about their plan to off somebody. They've already decided to do it, and they're gonna film the whole thing. So in this movie, we watch them meticulously decide what weapons we're gonna use. How are we gonna resize our bathroom for a dead body? Home Rentals 101, everybody. And also, they gotta pick their victim. So barring films like August Underground, apparently this is as close to a snuff film as you can get without watching the real thing. So, cross that off the bucket list, I guess. The camera zooms in on saws hacking through arms, guts piling up in the tub, and it's an unflinching portrayal of the violence from the perspective of the killers. The viewer is placed in the subject position of both characters, seeing through their eyes and therefore implicating the viewer in the atrocities, which makes the viewing experience that much more uncomfortable on top of seeing red fluids drain out of the tub. Unsettling and uncomfortable, this movie is worth sitting through for the performances alone. Oh, and by the way, we enter this film after the duo have already made and committed to their plan. But as they film each other, the dynamic becomes clear. This isn't just a single psychopath filming his exploits. These are two people with complicated feelings trying to navigate love in the face of the unimaginable. These guys aren't just married, they depend on each other. They are each other's anchors to the point of codependency. The first-person perspective allows us to better understand their minds as they become more and more embroiled in the plan. This shocking found footage film isn't just about that shock factor though, it's about the love and how we come to depend on somebody in a relationship. Sure, in reality, if your partner asked you to kill somebody, you'd be like, alright, I'm out. But this, entertains the idea that maybe you'd want to stay, maybe you'd help. After all, love makes us do crazy things, and because of that mindset alone, that's why I'd consider this a dangerous movie. Here's a movie that's less about jump scare effect, more of a lingering sadness situation. More simply put, Lake Mungo is a movie about dread. This 2008 Australian horror film is pegged to the overall concept of dread, that lingering sense of inevitable but unknowable doom that hangs over our heads. To quote journalist Vinnie Mancuso, the experience isn't exactly pleasant, but it is essential to have your rear end absolutely handed to you by a horror movie from time to time. This is the only feature filmmaking effort to date by writer and director Joel Anderson, and this is a ghost story. It's built from grief, one that's immediately recognizable to anybody who's ever lost somebody or briefly lost themselves. It's devastating, it's terrifying, and I think every single person who loves horror with a pulse should watch it at least once, and then immediately call their loved ones. So the first words you hear in the movie are "Alice is missing," which is both the literal driving force of the story and a heart-wrenching hint at its underlying themes. Told in a faux documentary format, the film tells the story of Alice Palmer, a girl of legal driving age who drowned at a dam in a small town in Australia. So in the aftermath, strange occurrences have the rest of the Palmer family believing in ghosts, the supernatural, yeah, kind of the supernatural ones, but also the lingering regrets of a life cut short. The Palmers admit that they never really knew their daughter, so Mother June admits she always struggled to connect with Alice. And there's some secrets are revealed to the point that the girl struggled to feel alive, even before her death. The Palmer's search for closure leads them to the actual Lake Mungo, to a cell phone buried by Alice on a school trip, and the footage she took weeks before her death. The footage has all the washed out graininess of a 2008 flip phone, but that's not quite what makes it feel otherworldly. So as Alice stumbles through the dark, the camera freewheels widely. You feel untethered from time or location until you finally focus on something approaching from the darkness. Slowly, very slowly. And it's not until it's inches from the frame does the film freeze and tell you what you're seeing. Alice's own bloated, decomposing corpse somehow stumbling out of her future. So there's a couple of reasons why this moment is so effective, and the first being that it's so goddamn scary. Just masterful service level execution of gluing the audience in place, focusing on a single point, and then just walloping you over the head with an unexplainable image. But the ending of Lake Mungo is also devastating because of what it means. Or more accurately, because it lacks any concrete explanation for those of us left alive. Throughout the many twists and turns, the Palmer family is just searching for answers, because that's what you do when somebody dies. Hey, if you've ever suffered from anxiety or depression, you know what it's like to feel outside your body. To find you're drifting through life like a phantom. Alright folks, next up we have a movie that's so heinous, I'm not even supposed to be talking about it. I can't even say its title, but let's just call it the people-eating mass extinction event of the 1930s and 40s. This flick from director Ruggero Deodato wasn't his first movie about people eating, but definitely the one that got the most flack from the media. So this director's been making films since the 1960s, and he's always had a trademark style. Flashy, grimy pictures with a hardened edge and plenty of schmeksh and violence. He was one of the many Italian directors who facilitated the people-eating boom of the late 70s and had already made one such film, The Last C-Word World, before he got around to this one. So despite his sensationalist style, he had already proven himself not only a very competent director, but one with depth and ideas worthy of cinematic examination. So this is the story of a professor journeying to the Amazon to discover what happened to a film crew, since they're all kind of missing. Lots of brave young Americans, and you realize that this characterization couldn't have been further from the truth. From the offset, the movie looks at how the mass media portrays its fellow Americans, the marginalization of those outside the land of the free, and what it means to be civilized. So the young filmmakers are immediately positioned by the media as victims of local savagery, and when anthropologist Dr. Monroe is sent to find them, it's only through his embracing of the local people that he comes across the lost film reels that will piece the puzzle together. Broadcasting executives back in New York are foaming at the mouth at the prospect of a new documentary, even more sensational than what had been promised to them. And they're so focused on that sensation and the viewing figures that the sizzle reel they show includes such antics as the gang forcibly amputating the leg of their guide, literal seconds after he suffers a snake bite. And there's not a lot more I can talk about when it comes to the plot of this one. So as is the case with many old school exploitation flicks, the reels were seized on the grounds of obscenity. But then something crazy happened. Those same reels became evidence in criminal proceedings. And this wasn't just a plain old, too devious for public consumption theatrical release. Folks thought this was a snuff film, and the weirdos who made it were apparently so brazen in their criminality as to throw an official premiere for it. So the director was brought up on killing charges, and was forced to bring his actors in for interviews to prove that they were still alive. He then demonstrated how they performed some of the special effects in the film. Eventually those charges were dismissed, and also, perhaps slightly more in keeping with Italy's progressive artistic reputation, the courts eventually overturned the movie's ban several years later. But by this point, the director and several of his associates had suffered considerable legal troubles, and countries around the world were banning this flick. or at the very least censoring it heavily. Also, before I move on, this film isn't entirely innocent. Although 6 animal deaths appear on screen, several animals were killed for the production, as a scene depicting the monkey's death was done twice, resulting in the death of 2 monkeys. So this film should be still banned for that reason alone, in my opinion. Alrighty everybody, we're gonna end today with a short but unsweet entry, The Taking of Deborah Logan. Mia Hu records the daily lives of Deborah Logan, a woman with Alzheimer's, as a part of her thesis. And as Deborah's behavior becomes increasingly bizarre and violent, it becomes apparent that there's more at work than the ravages of an incurable disease. Chock full of horrific imagery and effective scares, this film was a quietly shelved one that saw a second life on Netflix where it became a cult favorite. Gotta love movies that have already been knocked down for being shown a couple of times. And that brings us to the end of our time, and I think I need some eye bleach. In our 5th place position, we have my favorite creepy doll, Annabelle. Back when I was in high school, I actually got to portray her in a local haunted house, which was the beginning of my scare acting career. Hey, I promise I am quite terrifying if I want to be. I promise. For those of you who might be rolling their eyes right now, I'm going to refresh memories on the real Annabelle story. So feel free to cozy up and listen. Donna and Angie were student nurses and good friends who had decided to room together while in school. And for Donna's 28th birthday, her mom had gifted her a very large Raggedy Ann doll, something she was thrilled about. Personally, I'd react the same way. Let the record know that I'm always down to accept gifts of dolls or plushies. Soon after adopting the precious doll, Donna started to notice some weird behavior. She would leave Annabelle in her bed every morning behind her locked bedroom door, seating her the same way with her arms and legs crossed, and would come home at night to Annabelle having moved rooms and in positions that weren't possible. She's described a few instances of the doll kneeling, and speaking from experience, stuffed dolls can't kneel without falling for more than a few seconds. Donna and Angie then started finding notes left throughout the apartment, written on parchment paper in red pen. 2 things they didn't own. When Donna's boyfriend Lou started criticizing the doll, unexplainable handprints and scratches began appearing on his body. And that's when the girls made the decision to call a priest, who then brought in the Warrens. They were able to calm down the entity enough to remove it from the home and transport her to their museum, where she resides to this day. Now, the footage I'm talking about here is from the visitors who have visited Annabelle in her current residence over the years. If you look closely, you can just see the energy that's alive in her. Also, if she was never removed from her box until like the last few years, how is she able to change position ever so slightly from one video to the next? You tell me here. In 4th place, we have footage from a Buddhist exorcism. Known as parita, which can be translated as protection or safeguard, it refers to the Buddhist practice of reciting certain verses and scriptures in order to ward off misfortune or danger. The practice of reciting or listening to the parita suttas began very early in the history of Buddhism. The Mahavamsa contains the earliest historical reference to this practice, describing how Upatissa I instructed monks to recite the Ratana Sutta throughout the night during a period when Sri Lanka was afflicted by plague and diseases. In the Pali literature, these short verses are recommended by the Buddha as providing protection from certain afflictions. The belief in the effective power to heal or protect of the Sakakariya, or asseveration of something quite true, is an aspect of the work ascribed to the Parita. It is also widely believed that all-night recitations of Parita by monks bring safety, peace, and well-being to a community. Parita discourses can be recited at events like a funeral or on the death anniversary of a loved one, and can also be recited to placate antagonistic spirits. In 1987, Ed and Lorraine took a trip to Japan to offer their expertise in some cases that were ongoing in different parts of the country, with one of their stops being to a Buddhist temple. Describing everyone they encountered as lovely, Ed and Lorraine were shocked when they came upon not 1, but 2 people under possession. Ed described one as being under the influence of a snake demon, as they slithered around the floor constantly with their tongue darting in and out of their mouth. The possessed people were blindfolded, so the demons couldn't witness the rites, as the Buddhas went through the rituals and chanted around them. After the spirits were cast out, a bonfire was built to help guide them towards the afterlife. The footage we see is from a later round of prayers, which was held because one of the sets of spirits refused initially to depart from her attached soul. You can hear Lorraine attempting to guide the spirit out with the aid of a translator, coaxing Teresa to go on to the light and fly away, that her family was no longer here. In 3rd place, we have the elusive White Lady of Union Graveyard. Some believe she is Harriet Seeley, whose young son passed shortly after being born, and Harriet herself passing soon afterwards. Legend believes she may have died in hopes of finding her son, and still wanders their final resting place searching him out, while others believe she is the ghost of a woman from the 1940s who killed her husband and later herself and is doomed to wander the graveyard. You tell me which one you believe. Her physical description is the one thing that remains consistent. She is a young woman wearing a white dress with dark hair. Thank goodness I'm not wearing white today. It seems as if she enjoys scaring the daylights out of the living, which, hey, my kind of gal. Many who have witnessed her believe they have almost hit her with their vehicle, only to find no trace of her once they pull over, while others claim they have often seen her hovering slightly above the ground around the cemetery, going back and forth amongst different gravestones. In 1993, local firefighter Glenn Powell received a call about a transformer explosion and drove to the scene of the incident with a police officer and observed a female driver following closely behind him on the road. He remembers the night sky had turned pink, my favorite color, and the explosion emitted large amounts of electricity that had made the hair on his arm stand up at a close distance. Glenn was driving along the road beside the cemetery when the officer seated next to him yelled, "Watch out!" In the middle of the road was a woman with, you guessed it, long brown flowing hair and wearing a white Victorian nightgown. Glenn described seeing a surprised look on her face before slamming on the brakes, but was unable to avoid hitting her, describing it like hitting a brick wall, with the back of his truck flying into the air and the policeman next to him being launched into the dashboard. The driver behind him jumped out of the car and helped the two men search the area of the crash to check on the woman. Glenn is quoted as saying, "There was no red bodily fluids, there was no clothing, there was nobody, there was nothing." Located in Connecticut, Lorraine used to often take walks through the cemetery, saying that it was one of the most haunted places around. Ed caught the white lady on camera on September 1st, 1990 at 2:40 a.m., his 7th night in a row of filming at the cemetery, determined to have footage as proof, and we can show some of that footage to you now. He described dark figures surrounding her, shapes that he said were wood ghosts that seemed to jump on her while they all argued. In second place, we have the Amityville Horror. On November 13th of 1974, Ronald DeFeo Sr., his wife, and 4 of their offspring, Dawn, Allison, Mark, and John, had their lives ended by a firearm inside their home in suburban Amityville, New York. And at the time, homicide detectives claimed it was the largest number of victims in a single slang on Long Island. The deceased were found in their nightclothes and were shot in the back, apparently while they were asleep. There were no signs of a struggle inside the home, where a sign hanging outside the main entrance read, "High hopes." Sure. The killings were reported by the only surviving member of the family, the oldest son, Ronald. He told the police that he arrived at the home shortly after 6 p.m. but found the front door locked, so he crawled into the house through a window and stumbled across the icky scene. He later confessed that he had ended the lives of his family around 3:30 a.m., acting out the scenes for detectives as he described how he took out his family one by one, with the weapon eventually being found in Amityville Creek. Ronald's trial began in October of 1975. His defense attorney, William Weber, tried to make a case that the defendant, who allegedly heard voices, was innocent by reason of insanity, but the court eventually sentenced him to 6 concurrent 25-year to life sentences. Try saying that 5 times fast. Eesh. A year later, the Lutz family moved into the now abandoned home, and that's where this goes from simply tragic to much, much more. Most of the DeFeo family's furniture was still in the house, because it was included for $400 as part of the deal. You know what, I'd take that deal too. A friend of George Lutz, the father of the family, had learned about the history of the house and insisted on having it blessed, and at the time, George was a non-practicing Methodist and had no experience of what this would entail. Kathy, the mom, was a non-practicing Catholic and explained the process to him. George knew a Catholic priest named Father Mancuso who agreed to carry out the house blessing. He arrived to perform the blessing while George and Kathy were unpacking their belongings on the afternoon of December 18th, 1975, and went into the home to carry out the rites. When he flicked the first amount of holy water and began to pray, he heard a masculine voice demand that he get out. When leaving the house, the priest did not mention this incident to either George or Kathy until December 24th, when he called George and advised him to stay out of the second-floor room where he had heard the mysterious voice, which happened to be the former bedroom of Mark and John DeFeo that Kathy had planned to use as a sewing room, but the call was cut short by static. Following his visit to the house, the father allegedly developed a high fever and blisters on his hands, similar to stigmata. At first, George and Kathy experienced nothing unusual in the house, but the horrors that happened over the next 28 days were awful for the Lutz family, bearing witness to slime pouring out of their walls, strange odors throughout the home, and George would wake up at 3:15 every morning, which is right around the time Ron DeFeo carried out his original crimes. A garage door would open and close on its own, an invisible spirit knocked a knife down in the kitchen, a pig-like creature with red eyes was reported staring at George and his son Daniel through a window. Also, Kathy and 2 of her children experienced bouts of levitation while trying to sleep. The footage we have from this heinous month is of a boy with glowing eyes, believed to be the spirit of the late John DeFeo. By mid-January of 1976, after another attempt at a house blessing by George and Kathy, they experienced what would be their final night in the house. Now, the Lutzes were never able to give a full account of the events that took place on this occasion, describing them as too frightening. After getting in touch with Father Mancuso, the Lutzes decided to take some belongings and stay at Kathy's mother's house in nearby Deer Park, New York, until they had sorted out the problems with the house. They claimed the phenomena followed them there, describing greenish-black slime coming up the staircase towards them. Yeah, no thanks. And finally, in first place, we have footage of an American exorcism. While the video is blurred out on YouTube to protect the identity of the poor girl, I personally think it's up there as one of the most frightening things I've ever seen. At an hour and 20 minutes long, it depicts a Catholic bishop in Connecticut attempting to converse with a demonic entity that has possessed the body of an innocent young woman, while her family restrains her. Ed and Lorraine were the ones to alert the church to the possession after meeting her during an audience chat session that was held at the conclusion of one of their public presentations. During portions of the exorcism when prayer is done, you can hear the demon acting wildly, and it originally refuses to give its name, both of which are quite common in cases of demonic possession. Eventually we learn that there are 4 demons possessing our victim, with one of them identifying themselves as Robert, which happens to be a name associated with the son of Satan. I'll let a snippet roll now, allowing you to hear the woman for yourself. And that's the end of this list, bringing me to my regular motto: don't mess with spirits, don't mess with Ouija boards, and for the love of everything, let demons be. Trust me, I love spooky things and reading spooky stories, but it's so not worth it to bring that kind of hell into your life. Random human beings are scary enough as it is. Let's start off today with a cryptid and work our way up to the big guys. So a YouTuber uploaded a video that was apparently filmed on September 26th or 27th of 2013 in the woods around Montreal, Quebec, Canada. In the video, an unidentified man films himself walking through the forest at night. Now, we're not sure why he does that, and also, the original video has since been taken down, which might have had context. I'm pretty sure he's looking for something. Now it's just part of these compilations. Eventually, he comes upon something that frightens him, and after exclaiming, "Oh," can't say that word, "oh God," he immediately turns and begins running in the other direction. Given how dark the footage is, it's not entirely clear what he saw until you slow down the video and you zoom in. Further ahead on the trail, something appears to peek out briefly from a tree before returning to its original position behind said tree. The creature does not appear to be any type of known animal. Rather, it's pale, fish-faced, and with seemingly large eyes. It looks almost like a gray alien type. Look, this video is the real deal, and also if you think about it, it's got a very authentic feel to it. The reaction upon seeing the creature, like, this guy's genuinely startled. He's not rehearsed. I can tell I'm an actor. Now, one of my first thoughts when I saw this footage was like, oh, this cryptid, it's a hide behind, seeing as it ducks really fast. It's a nocturnal critter from American folklore that preys upon humans that wander the woods. It was blamed for the disappearances of early loggers when they failed to return to camp, and as the name suggests, it's able to conceal itself. When you look directly at it, it hides, ducks away. Look, it makes sense to me. You let me know in the comments what you think. As promised, it's UFO time. Alright, I'll be the first to admit we don't know as much about this footage as some of the other entries today, so bear with me. I found this video on Reddit, and while the site does tend to be the Wild West for finding credible information, I think my nonsense filter is pretty decent. So a while ago, user CuriousAD5774 said, "Don't got much to say about this video, other than when my dad originally sent it to me. I felt like it had to be a UFO, and there's nothing else that seemed to explain it." Now, Canada is notorious for sightings. I've seen a couple of them, and look, this video was taken way before drones were being used regularly. He thinks it's about 10 years old. So let's break down the video together, shall we? While watching the video, you can see a number of different orbs in a dark sky, and the way they move cannot be explained by science. Now, another commenter, Death Perception, has an idea of what it could be. He's like, yeah, this is pretty good footage, it's dark, it's an old video, but if we're all assuming it's real, pretty sure it is, then it's clearly the typical black triangle that's been seen since at least the 90s. Now somebody else, only capital 5393, was able to relate to the footage, saying it was exactly what their brother and mother described back in the 90s. They were driving in New Hampshire in the wee hours of the morning, going south, and this UFO came and followed them for a while on the highway. There was nobody else around, and it was just hanging out. Whee! Here we go. The lights are exactly what they described though, how they kind of spin in a circle around the center light. And the commenter had never seen anything like they described until that moment. Now, he would have loved to have sent it to the mother and brother, but sadly they passed away. And if we want to talk about how credible the mom was as a witness, she was an Air Force flight nurse during Vietnam. If she hadn't seen it, come on. She had heard rumors about UFOs being real, by the way, and that made her pretty interested in the subject. She actually became like a UFOologist. She joined a lot of organizations, and at one meeting, she sat at the same table with Betty Hill. Time to fulfill another promise, and that's evidence of Bigfoot. Paul Freeman claims that while working as a watershed patroller for the US Forest Service back in 1982, he encountered a Sasquatch, or Bigfoot, near Walla Walla, Washington. Now, him being a whistleblower and talking about knowing about Bigfoot brought brought him a lot of criticism and disrupted his family's life, causing him to quit the job and relocate. But he returned to the area in 1984 and devoted the rest of his life to a search for evidence. He collected hair, photographs, and a wide variety of casts of footprints and other body parts. Now, in 1992, he followed a series of tracks near Dibbuk Creek and got a close-up video. I'm also pretty sure some of the footage is from 1994, which was when he captured video near the Blue Mountains region of northeastern Oregon. Now, the recordings are considered authentic by quite a few Bigfoot investigators, but sadly for us, a lot of the resolution is too low to be considered conclusive. But I'm pretty sure these videos hold credibility. Could they have been hoaxed? Sure, but I have too many doubts for it to be a fake. And also, the videos offer the possibility that these creatures have supernatural abilities. Now, if you're asking, yo Alexa, who's this Paul Freeman guy? And why do you think these videos are so credible? Allow me. He was an American Bigfoot hunter, and he discovered a lot of tracks showing dermal ridges. And the plaster casts he made were convincing enough to be considered critical pieces of evidence by anthropologists. Now, if we're talking about which anthropologists, Jeff Meldrum of Idaho State University and Grover Krantz of Washington State University, they put a lot of time and resources into studying them. And it's hard to get resources to study things that aren't credible. Now, sadly, Paul passed away in 2003, but he was adamant until the day he died that what he saw was real proof that Bigfoot is out there. On Saturday, March 11th of last year, William Church, a professional truck driver who regularly drove on Arizona State Route 87, noticed a bright glare in his dash cam, and he thinks the flashing figure is a ghost. Now, he's described himself as someone who has seen a lot of weird stuff during his travels, but he's been able to make sense or explain away everything, except for this video. The specter was spotted at around 2:30 in the morning while William drove past the highway's 200-mile marker, which is located between Phoenix and Payson, Arizona. And since it was that very ungodly hour, there was nobody on the road, and he captured something weird on his Nextcar dash cam, which I guess is a leading dash cam brand. And thankfully, we've got the footage. Granted, it's only 6 seconds long, so pay attention now. And now that we're back, I shall continue. He is positive the translucent figure y'all just saw looks like a person standing in the roadway, saying he can see the lines through the legs that make up the figure. So if we want to give a little context on the area, Arizona State Route 87 is a north to south highway that was constructed in 1927 and measures approximately 272.66 miles. The north end travels to State Route 264 near Second Mesa, a census designated place in Arizona, while the south end travels to Interstate 10 near Picacho, an unincorporated community and another census designated place. Now, a lot of fatal accidents have happened on this 96-year-old highway, which has reportedly led some locals to believe that the road could be haunted. Look, a recent fatal car crash happened on State 87 near milepost 201 in February of last year, and last I checked, the exact cause of the crash is unknown. The two-person collision resulted in the death of one person near Bush Highway, which is east of Fountain Hills, and Valley Chevy dealers in Phoenix named State Route 87 one of Arizona's most dangerous roads. So, if you watch this video that we're talking about today, yeah, there's a lot of supernatural activity on these highways. Because why? Well, people die, spirits don't move on. And look, I'm speaking as somebody who drives, has a license. I don't want to see any ghosts when I'm driving tonight. No thank you. And how about we end today with some 2016 killer clown footage. Now, I'm friends with a lot of creepy clowns. I've been one myself. But 2016 was a rough year to be a clown. The 2016 clown sighting incidents were reported in the United States, Canada, Australia, and a lot of other countries and territories in August of that year. They were first reported in Green Bay, Wisconsin, in what turned out to be a marketing stunt for a horror film, but the phenomenon later spread to many other cities in the US. And by mid-October, clown sightings and attacks have been reported in nearly all of the US states, 9 out of 13 provinces and territories of Canada, and 18 other countries. Alright. Watch the video now before I start fuming over clown rights, and we can break it down after. So this footage shows the masked monster emerging from a motorway underpass and standing in the middle of the road, waving very creepily at the stopped car. Now when the figure starts walking towards the vehicle, the male driver tries to reverse away, but then the crazed clown makes a sudden dash towards the family in the car. And these guys were just trying to come home from a nice dinner out. After backing up far enough, the panicked driver puts his foot down and speeds towards the clown, who jumps out of the road a split second before being mowed down by the car. Now, the driver who put his foot down and sped towards the clown, it's terrifying. In the original Facebook post, the wife of the driver wrote that the incident took place at Grange Mill Lane, and they were confronted by this person coming out from the underpath tunnel and charging at them. I don't know what to make of it. As much as I love a good killer clown, such as one of my besties, Buttons, there's a reason they only exist in controlled fictional situations. And this, if I ever saw a killer clown when I'm driving, absolutely not.